With a recruiting class still in the mid 60s, the class of 24 for Boston College still hasn't hit where it needs to hit. Where have they done things right? Where do they still need to improve upon? And where do they go from here? We'll get into all of that on today's show.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome. This is Locked On BC. I'm your host, AJ Black. We're going to talk recruiting today. If you know me, you know that's my bread and butter here at Eagle Insider, a part of the 247 network. I bring that knowledge to you here on Locked On BC every now and then. We're going to talk about the class BC has put together, what they've done right, where they still need to improve, and where do they go from here. So let's jump into that right now. So we're now June 10th. If you're listening to this on a Monday. And BC, right, I just looked it up before I jumped on the air. Their class ranked is 68th in the country. It's better than the 92nd or 93rd it was when they had one commitment in the beginning of June, but still not where you want to be. So with 13 recruits committed, where has BC done well? Well, first of all, I would look at a few things that I think that they've done well. And the first is that they've landed some skill position players, both defensively and offensively, that on the top of their recruiting groups that I like. I think Josiah Martin, first of all, wide receiver from Geyer, Texas, is a real steal. This guy's 5'11", had offers from Alabama, TCU, you name it, he was offered there, committed to BC. Love what he's going to be able to bring to Boston College, and he's another Texas guy. This is another year where BC's going to bring in multiple guys from the state of Texas, and I'm a big fan of that. They've already landed two with Ashton McShane, a cornerback. They would have had three if Keondae Henry stayed on, but he didn't. So I think that I love recruiting in the state of Texas. You know me, right? You can have a good 4-star recruit from Massachusetts or from Pennsylvania, and you watch their huddle films, and it looks like, the Incredible Hulk playing with a bunch of minions, because the gap in talent is so egregious. It's comical to watch. You see these guys that are playing against guys that have no business playing against them. And yeah, it looks like a circus reel on some of those huddle films, those highlight reels. Give me a recruit from Texas that plays in a tougher conference, that plays good talent, that he's from the state of Texas. Because the high school ball in the Lone Star State is like, it's like a lower division of college football. If you're from Texas, I don't even need to tell you, but like if you've watched Friday Night Lights, you got to see a glimpse of what it's like. That high school football is such a big deal down in that state. They take it very seriously. So you're getting guys that are a little bit more polished, that are playing against other guys that are probably going to be playing at a collegiate level. It's a bigger thing. So I love that they have Josiah Martin, that they have Ashton McShane as two of the guys that are coming in. In addition, some of the other things I like Benjamin Blackburn. I was really impressed that BC ended up landing Benjamin Blackburn. Now, if you've been a fan of this podcast, you know my favorite position. It's the old dad joke. It's the tight end, right? They've landed two tight ends. They've got Blackburn and they've got Jackson Santiago. Blackburn to me is the one that I want to see play on BC. The one I'm not bashing Santiago because I think he could do some things as well. But Blackburn fits a lot of what the tight end position has been under Jeff Hafley, whether it's Hunter Long, Trey Berry, or George Takis. You got that big guy that hopefully will be able to catch the ball. Blackburn's 6'6", 230. He can move. And he's one of the higher ranked tight ends out there. He's 45th at his position, but I like what he can do. So that's another position I think that BC has done a nice job with. And then finally, the last piece I think BC has done a nice job with in their 13 recruits is landing some defensive backs. They've got 4 already, right? If you look at their list, they have Desmond Stevens. He's your top guy, who didn't bother with his visits. I think it was to Louisville and Purdue, and ended up at BC right after his official visit. He's a guy from Clarkston, Michigan. You know, Michigan's another place that BC's done a really nice job with. You have Christian Zamore. Haven't heard much about Christian in a while, but he's still there. You know, his brother Ish is one of the wide receivers who's going to be a redshirt freshman this year. He's there. You also add in Charlie Comella, who we talked about a couple weeks ago. Possibly one of the fastest guys that they have in this recruiting class. You know, you go to 247 and there's not a ton on him. He is a guy that didn't have a ton of offers coming out of, you know, his junior year, but then blew up at BC's camp. Ran a really good 40-yard dash. He's a track star, basketball play. He's going to play baseball, for BC baseball. I love his speed. So he's one last one. And then finally, as I mentioned before, McShane. McShane is going to, another Texas guy. As I just said, Texas, give me those Lone Star guys, because I think if you build your team around that, look at the team right now. You got Jacoby Robinson. You've got Jaden Williams. You just had Tyler Vrabel. You get some Texas guys into this roster. Jalen Williams, a cornerback, I think we'll hear more from this year. A lot of good Texas talent will rise to the top. Now, in a moment, I want to get into where they haven't hit, because when you're a recruiting class that's 68th right now and you're an ACC team, that shows me that you're missing some things. And I'm going to talk about what BC is missing and what's going on at those areas, because there's some really concerning things, and I want to get into all of that in just a moment. But before we do that, I want to get into our good old friends at Bird Dog. If you know me, you know I am a man that loves his bird dogs. I am going on a trip this week, and I am bringing 4 pairs of bird dogs with me. I took all my other shorts. I threw them in the trash. I got rid of them because I love my bird dogs so much. They fit well. I get compliments constantly. They look good on me. They make my legs and my thighs look good, and it makes me look like I've been working out, which I have been. So I love the way that they have. Bird dogs do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but fit way better. They are, and the best part about them, and the part I love, is they are made better than regular shorts, because regular shorts have restricting cotton. Bird Dogs uses this cloud knit fabric that looks like khaki but stretches, so it's way slimmer fit without having to restrict movement at all. And so what I'd love you to do, go to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege and enter promo code LockedOnCollege for a free Yeti style tumbler with your order. That's birddogs.com/lockedoncollege or promo code LockedOnCollege for a free Yeti style tumbler. I'm telling you, folks, you do not want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you. Locked On BC, AJ Black here. We're talking recruiting's ups and downs, and that's where it's been right now. When you're coming off a 3-9 season, a season where you had one of the most miserable seasons in college football. I mean, let's be frank, it was terrible. You let go of your offensive coordinator. You let go of your offensive line coach. Your defensive coordinator just went to the pros. And your head coach, Jeff Hafley, is probably on the hot seat. It has impacted recruiting. Absolutely. There's no way of getting around that. It's not easy. I have to imagine for that staff, it's not been easy to go on that recruiting trail and trying to sell the vision that they have. It's much more difficult than it was probably a year or two ago when things were looking much more up. And it has hurt Boston College in a number of different areas. Now, BC had 30-ish official visits on campus in the month of June, and they ended up landing 12. Not a bad number. You look at the guys that they landed, a bunch of them did not take official visits elsewhere. The guys that didn't commit were the ones that looked elsewhere, and that's a tougher pill to swallow. You look at a guy like Mason Wade or Kyla Tuner or Chris Leno, all offensive linemen who had multiple official visits set up. They didn't end up at Boston College because you have a school that has, a program that, resource wise is behind a lot of other schools. You had a coaching staff that before could sell that this program's going in the right direction, but last year's results are easy for any program to negatively recruit against, and that's what happened. So, where are some of the places BC has missed? What positions have BC really struggled with? The first has to be the offensive line. First and foremost, the Eagles had I just mentioned 3, but I think there might have been 2 or 3 others that have been on campus for official visits at the offensive line position, and they only landed 1, and that is Judah Pruitt, who, was on campus and then flipped from Rutgers. But why? Why has it been such an issue for Boston College to lock down offensive linemen? They brought in Matt Applebaum, who was here 2 years ago. And I know some fans are really not a big fan of Applebaum. The players are, though. I mean, you hear what Christian Mahogany has to say, their star guard. He's a big fan of them. But clearly, Applebaum's message isn't landing. And the reason I think right now that message isn't landing is that these players saw, these players are probably hearing it from other coaches, or if they saw it themselves, know what happened with BC's offensive line last year. They saw an offensive line that was a complete disaster. And, they're probably saying to themselves or hearing from other coaches like, oh, well, our offensive line is way better than theirs. You guys should come play with us. Or you really want to get, do you want to be part of a rebuild or whatever? Then it's harder for them to get past hearing, well, we've got this going. We're going to be better this year because they haven't seen it. They saw last year where the team couldn't run the ball. They saw a team where the offensive line was, all completely disjointed. They just fired their offensive line coach. They brought another guy back. All of that chaos at that position in the last 12 months absolutely has made it harder to recruit. But we'll get into it in our final segment. There's a light at the end of the tunnel there. I think we'll get into why I think that's going to happen. But when I look at what Applebaum has done, I've seen people saying, like, is it because he's a bad coach, or is it because, he doesn't relate to players? That's not what I've heard at all from players, from recruits, from current staff. I don't think that's the issue. I look at this as a bigger issue from last year. Now, it hasn't been perfect, though, because you look at last year, they landed 2, offensive linemen. This year, they only have 1. You need to start getting some guys. And why did it happen last year? Well, they got rid of Applebaum. Well, I don't know if they got rid of him, but Applebaum was gone. He went to the Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins. They brought in Googs, so there was change again. That kind of like shuffling around always obviously hurts a little bit. But this is an area I think BC has to start locking some stuff down. In our final segment, I'll get into what they have to do there. Another position I feel like that they haven't done well at is the quarterback position. As folks have said, you want to get a quarterback every class. I get that. You don't, one of the biggest cheerleaders in a lot of recruiting classes is the quarterback position. You see it when you read recruiting stories. This guy is trying to bring in, they're all trying to bring in their friends or guys that they've seen on the camp circuit. And, they're out there as the ringleader because, most quarterbacks by trade are leaders. They're a great person to get out there as a voice for your program. So that part is concerning. That being said, I've said on the show before, I don't see it as this is like a detriment, like this is going to like completely mess up the class and whatnot. But when you miss on Henry Hasselback, Miles O'Neill, Aiden Glover, Ryan Puglisi, you go up and down the roster. There was a bunch that they had on their big boards that I had up on the site. Didn't hit on any of them. That's worrisome. Again, a lot of this, I think, if BC can figure things out this year, we'll eventually, clear things up. I think that's a piece that I worry about. Finally, I think the last real position that I was like, I feel like they haven't really hit where I would like to see them is the defensive line. You brought in Jason Flint. You also brought in another defensive lineman, Cam Gwynn. And, both guys are fine. They're not high-end defensive linemen, though. You didn't get the Benedicts, some of the bigger, DeAndre Cooks and some of the other bigger names that they had on their list because they just haven't been able to hit on it. Again, I go back to a lot of this going against a 3, and when you're the worst team in the ACC, it's so hard. It's difficult to get yourself back in footing. But hopefully this season will change. You have to hope that a more positive season will get the Eagles over that hump. So for the class of 25, you're talking from a level from an area of strength. Like, hey, we did do what we said we're going to do. We brought in transfers to fix it, but you can be part of this. You can be part of this change. Now, in our final segment, I want to get into where does BC go from here for this class of 2024, because they're not done yet. And there's still a lot of time for this class to change. I'll get into what all that means in just a moment. This is Locked On BC, AJ Black here. And we're talking the class of 24. We looked at the current state. We talked about the needs of, where they did not hit. And now we're going to look at what they have to do from here on out. So from folks I've talked to, from my sources, I expect this class to be around 17 recruits. A lot of times BC takes close to 25, but from what I've heard, this class is going to be smaller so that they can hit on the transfer portal if they have to again. I think most BC fans can say that's a pretty good thing. Like, you don't want BC just to go out there and just, land, a whole bunch of recruits and not even bother in the transfer portal. When you need to hit the transfer portal, you do it. So 17 is around where they're going to be at. They're at 13 right now, so they only have a few more slots for this class. But that means a few more slots if nothing changes. And things are going to change. You're going to lose guys. You're going to add guys. So where does BC go from here? I still think offensive line is a position that BC has to hit on. They have not done it yet. And I've said along that, you've missed on some of the guys that you wanted at the first. But fortunately, offensive lineman is a position where things can change over the senior year. The staff is going to start addressing and looking at guys more recent tape and senior year tape, which is going to be coming out, in a month and a half, with guys that are going to develop, because that's a position where guys continue to develop. When you have an offensive lineman, as a freshman in high school, he's going to start at 230, 330 pounds. And by the time he hits the end of his senior year, he's up to 280, 290. You're going to see a lot of guys that develop that last senior year and become more of, this is someone I'm interested in. I'm going to go for that. So I think BC is going to really change their offensive line big board. You're going to see more names on there. Of course, on the picture is the white whale himself, Kirby Lambert. For him, you're just going to hope he doesn't decide until BC season starts. Because if BC can somehow figure out how to get the season going, that'll improve their odds of getting him over Notre Dame and Ohio State. But he's another one you're going to look for. From there, I think it's all about talent, whether it's a running back, defensive lineman, a wide receiver again. I think basically right now, your board that you had going into that June period where you had official visits is gone. And it's like that for a lot of teams. Most guys have already decided to either come to BC or go somewhere else. Once they've done their 4 visits that they take in June, most guys commit to wherever they want. So I think that changes, your board, and you'll see a whole bunch, and I'll have them up on Eagle Insider, of new names that BC will target in that fall evaluation period. So that'll be something else to watch for. But on top of that, I think it's also important to notice that there's going to be decommitments, flips, and changes to this class. One news thing that's going on right now that I'm going to keep my eye on is the situation going on at Northwestern. Coach Coach Fitz over there is in a major trouble with a hazing situation. He was suspended with the most ridiculous slap on the wrist at the beginning of the month, where they were going to suspend him for the first 2 weeks of July, when most college coaches don't do anything anyways. But after a newer expose by the student newspaper, it looks like his days could be gone. Now, he has 3 offensive linemen there. Could be something to watch. But there's going to be a bunch of other teams that are going to have players flip and leave and all sorts of stuff. And BC recruits that are going to do the same thing. So that is another place to watch. It's going to be those flips. What's going to happen? If BC plays better, they're going to be an attractive option for some schools. And there's going to be guys too that, they hear the siren song from another program and they end up, flipping from BC. So I think that's going to be it. You're going to see brand new big boards of names and players, and some of them are committed elsewhere. I can tell you, I've seen some of the activity the coaches are going at. I specifically the offensive line. I know that they've been kind of looking at some players that are definitely committed elsewhere. So it's not the end of the road for some of these recruits. So that's where we're going to wrap things up with this recruiting wrap up. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. If you do, give me a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. And for every one of you who have listened every single episode, thank you all so much. I am away this week. I have episodes planned for Wednesday and Friday. You'll hear them live. But if there's any news story that happens this week, it won't be on the episodes. I have to let you know. So I said live. I mean, there are episodes chock full of news-ish stuff about the upcoming season, but there won't be news pieces. So if we get a commitment or BC gets a commitment or something happens, it won't be on those episodes. It'll have to be the week after. So I'm going to a wedding and I'm going to be away for the week. So I hope you guys are all doing well, staying cool, and we'll see y'all again soon. Follow me on Twitter and on Threads at AJBlack247. Take care, everyone.